All right, welcome to another video. I just want to make this video about sun god worship. Okay, and one of the things I was thinking about with this, you know, I was asking ChatGPT some questions, and I was thinking about the earliest known sun gods in the Bible. And I know the story of Tammuz is not a biblical story, but it made me think about, that was the beginning of Babylonian society. And Jesus is kind of the end of Babylonian society. So I was thinking about, from Tammuz to Jesus, the beginning of the Babylonian society, sun god worship to the end, because modern Christianity, the drawing, the images of Jesus always have like a big halo behind his head, or some type of light, behind him, or his whole body is, has light behind it, which symbolizes sun worship. So the Catholic Church has turned Jesus into a sun god, or a proto sun god, if you like. And Tammuz was seen as the first Babylonian sun god, but they had other gods. But ChatGPT tried to argue me down and say that Tammuz was not a sun god, but a god of fertility and seasonal crops. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you what I looked up, what prompt I used on ChatGPT, and what ChatGPT told me. Okay, so I said, give me a list of all the sun gods that were worshipped throughout history, starting with Tammuz, ending with Jesus. ChatGPT said, below is a historical mythological list of major sun gods or sun-associated deities across civilizations. Two important notes before we begin. Tammuz was not a sun god, but a vegetation, fertility deity whose seasonal death and return influenced later mythic patterns. You requested to begin with him, so he is listed first for continuity. So the reason I say that Tammuz was a sun god is because his birth and death line up with the death of, or the birth of, later sun gods. Okay, so Tammuz was like the first, in my book, because he was born on December 25th. All right, he celebrated as being born on December 25th. Same thing as all the other sun gods, because that is the time of the year when the sun, we have less light. Okay, the sun is up for the shortest amount of time, so that is seen as either a death or a birth. Okay, so that's why I figured Tammuz was the first, because his birth, his story, all of that lines up perfectly with sun gods later on. Okay, but it says that he basically, his story kind of helped sun god worship later on. That's why I also include him. All right. And Jesus, it says Jesus is not considered a sun god in Christianity, but early Christian writers and lay theologians sometimes use solar imagery, son of righteousness, S-U-N of righteousness, from Malachi 4:2 applied to Jesus. So he is included at the end strictly as an example of later symbolism, not as a pagan sun deity. All right. So, like I said, Christianity, the Catholic Church, the drawings from the Europeans, all have Jesus as a sun god. Okay, when you look up old pictures of some of these other beings, you'll see similarities. You'll see the halo behind them. You'll see like a little ring around their head symbolizing a halo. You'll see like a ring around their whole body symbolizing the whole body, is the sun type things. All right, so ancient Near East and Mesopotamia, Utu, Shamash, Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian. So the name was Utu or Shamash, true Mesopotamian sun god, god of justice and truth. Marduk is Babylonian, not originally a sun god, but later texts link him partially with solar authority as he rose to chief deity. Ra in Egypt, Primary Egyptian sun god, creator, travels across the sky daily. Atum, a form of evening sun, creator deity. Horus, sky god often linked with the sunrise of Pharaoh's patron. Amun Ra, merged deity representing the sun and its at its most powerful. Khepri, sun at dawn, represented as a scarab pushing the solar disk. So we've heard of a lot of these Egyptian gods. We've seen the imagery associated with them, but they are all sun gods. So you can see how throughout history, sun god worship just changed names with different things, okay? With the same basic god, okay? Canaanite and the Levant. Baal, storm god, not a pure solar deity, yet sometimes associated with seasonal cycles paralleling solar patterns. Okay, so Baal is a type of sun god. Shapash or Shapshu, true Canaanite sun goddess, a female mediator between gods and humans. Greece, Helios, literal personification of the sun, drives the solar chariot. So Greece had a sun god. And Apollo, which is also Greece, became associated with the sun, Phoebus Apollo, in later Greek and Roman tradition, though not originally a sun god. Rome, Sol, Sol Indigus, early Roman sun god. Sol Invictus, meaning the unconquered sun. Imperial era sun deity worshipped strongly by soldiers, often mentioned in discussion of solar symbolism overlapping early Christian imagery. So you see, this is why, when I mention things like Sol Invictus and Mithras and these other sun gods, right, is because they are real sun gods, and because they are directly, Jesus is a newer version of Sol Invictus or Mithras. Okay, I want you guys to understand that they have made Jesus, they have placed their pagan deities over the top of biblical names and biblical characters. All right, even though we know that they also changed the names, but on top of biblical characters. All right, I was just reading in 1 Maccabees how they place their gods on top of they worship their gods on the altar, on top of Yahweh's word, on top of his altar, on top of his commandments. Okay, they place their gods to be worshipped. So Sol Invictus is definitely one. And like I said, it's mentioned in discussions of solar symbolism overlapping early Christian imagery. So the images, the pictures that they paint of Jesus with the halo, that is not Jesus. It is Sol Invictus. All right. Let's keep going. India, Vedic and Hindu, Surya, major Hindu sun god, central in solar worship and yoga traditions. So yoga is a part of sun worship. So we want to make sure we're not doing anything dealing with yoga, no poses, none of that kind of stuff, okay? We don't want to draw anything to ourselves that is not from Yahweh, all right? Savitar, solar deity associated with the famous Gayatri mantra. Persia and Indo-Iranian, Mithra, later Mithras in Rome, Iranian god of covenants. In Roman Mithraism, heavily solar associated, Sol Invictus, Mithras. You see, so Sol Invictus and Mithras, the same god. These are all the same person, just personified by different groups in different ways. Okay? Japan, Amaterasu, Shinto sun goddess, mythic ancestor of Japanese emperors. Americas, Inti is an Incan sun god, major sun god, ancestor of Inca rulers. Huitzilopochtli, Aztec, water and sun deity, associated with the rising sun and sacrifice. Aztec, again, Tona Tonatiuh, sun god of the current world age. Slavic and Baltic, Dasbog, often regarded as a solar deity or a sun or a god blessed by the sun. Saulė, Lithuanian, prominent Baltic sun goddess. Christian tradition, solar symbolism, not sun worship. Jesus, there you go. Solar symbol imagery only. So they overlaid the images of biblical Jesus with sun worship. Okay. Christianity does not consider Jesus a sun god. However, early Christian writers use solar metaphors, son of righteousness from Malachi 4:2, applied to Jesus in early Christian tradition. So they applied their traditions to biblical characters, all right, in form of Christianity and sold it to you as Christianity. Early art showing Christ with a solar halo, symbolic overlap in late Roman era due to Sol Invictus imagery. This is symbolic, not theological sun worship, but it is because they slowly integrated more and more of Mithras and Sol Invictus into Christianity. So now we do everything. They do a Christmas morning, early morning Christmas mass with the Catholic Church. They do an Easter morning mass with the Catholic Church. Both of those are for Sol Invictus, all right, and Tammuz as well. So all of these sun gods, they do the same thing. They were all said to be born on like the same day, pretty much. Everything is the exact same. So it's the same God. And which is why I keep saying, be careful of what you are worshiping. Be careful and know what you are doing, because you will unknowingly be guided into pagan worship by the Christian church. That's why I say it's so dangerous. We got to really be on our P's and Q's and understanding where these things come from. I know where it comes from, and I use a lot of things when I say, when I talk, but I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So I have to pull up some of this stuff to try to get you guys to see I'm not crazy. When I say, Christian worship is just a hodgepodge of pagan rituals, it literally is. And when you break down all of the symbolism, like I already broke down the cross is not a cross. It's a letter T for Tammuz. And a lot of the traditions are not Christian traditions. They didn't start with Christians. They started way, way, way before. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So I asked, again, was there any sun god worship before Tammuz? Because I know in the book of Genesis, way early in the book of Genesis, when Nimrod started Babylon, Tammuz ended up becoming a Babylonian symbol. All right. He was personified as a god. So he was personified as a sun god. All right. And it is said that Semiramis was is it Semiramis? I think so. The mother of Tammuz is supposed to be the Virgin Mary before the Virgin Mary. So that is where a lot of the female goddesses come from, is from the story of Tammuz, Semiramis, and I forget the other person's name who started Babylon. But anyway, so there were sun gods before Tammuz. That's what this says. But Tammuz's story is so early in the book of Genesis that I have a hard time believing that. It may not have always been written down, but I have a hard time thinking that Tammuz was not the original sun god. But they said that there were sun gods before they even had names. People worshiped the sun before they even put a name to it. And Sumerian tablets, they say it's older than, it's the oldest writing. But do we know that for sure? No, not really. It's just that what they can find was the Sumerian tablets that to be the oldest. All right. Um, but you have to think of what language did Yahweh speak to Adam in the garden? Did he speak Sumerian, or did he speak Hebrew? I believe he spoke Hebrew. Um, anyway, let's keep going. It says Tammuz or Dumuzi appears in Sumerian tradition around 3000 to 2500 BCE, but the world already had sun deities well before him, including the earliest known civilizations. Below is a clear breakdown. Sun gods before Tammuz. Tammuz, Utu, is one of the oldest recorded sun gods in human history. Worshipped in Sumer at least 3500 to 3000 BCE. Temples existed long before Tammuz appears in the text. Shamash, continuation of Utu in later Semitic cultures. Worship predates the rise of Tammuz traditions. Egyptian sun deities, earlier than 3000 BCE. Egyptian religion is extremely old. Some solar symbolism appears even in pre-dynastic Egypt. Ra developed very early, as at least by 3000 BCE, possibly before. Atun, another early form related to the primordial sun. Horus as a sky sun god, pre-dynastic origins. Egyptian sun worship definitely predates Tammuz. Proto-Indo-European solar deities before written history. The Proto-Indo-European people, ancestors of the Greeks, Roman, Indians, etc., had a reconstructed sun goddess called Sawel, which is the linguistic ancestor of Greek Helios, Latin Sol, Sanskrit Surya, Slavic Sol, Baltic Sole. This worship predates all written mythologies, likely 4000 to 5000 BCE. And it keeps going from there. But I want you guys to see how all of these gods are the same God, just different names for different people for different times. We are in a modern time, but the same symbolism, the same everything is just refreshed in Christianity. And I want us to be very, very careful in everything that we do, everything that we believe, everything that we agree with, because you could be agreeing to something that will make you an abomination to Yahweh. And because I care so much, I want to make sure we do not make ourselves abominations to Yahweh. We don't make ourselves displeasing in His sight. We need His. He is our everything. So we need Him for everything. All right, for the next breath, for our faith, for everything to go decent in our lives, which is not even promised, but we trust Him for everything, that He's going to make everything good and work in our favor. Okay, so with that in mind, pay attention to everything around you. Question everything. Find out more and more of everything that goes on. So we've broken down the cross. Now we're breaking down the sun worship imagery. Okay, we already know. Everybody else is already talking about the Christmas tree, and everyone already talks about all these other deities. But I want to bring into our sight, our foresight, the different deities, and I'm going to keep going with these deities because I want to get to the bottom of the deity of Allah. Okay, and I know a lot of Muslim people are not going to like that, but I have this theory in my mind that Allah is not a new God. He is just a rebranding of something else. But I want to find out what else is He. In my mind, I'm thinking He's Baal, He's Baal, but I want to find out for sure. And I'm going to do some more research on this topic, and I will be bringing that to you guys. All right, so that we can all learn, we can all grow, we can all be aware of all the things that are all around us. I thank you so very much for another video. Thank you so very much for subscribing, for liking, for checking out my videos, learning with me. Let's continue to grow. Let's continue to build this army of Yahweh. Let's keep going. See you on the next video.